I never imagined a simple stroll with our newborn could turn into a full-blown police drama. But that's exactly what happened last Tuesday, right in the middle of our quiet neighborhood. Picture this, a crisp morning, birds chirping, the scent of freshly cut grass, and my wife, Emma, and I pushing our newborn in a stroller, enjoying a rare moment of peace. Sounds normal, right? Except normal apparently doesn't exist in our HOA's little bubble. We had barely reached the corner when I noticed her, Karen, the self-appointed neighborhood enforcer. You know the type. Perfectly manicured hair, sunglasses hiding an unforgiving glare, and a clipboard like it's a weapon of justice. She was glaring at us from across the street. Arms crossed, her stance screaming, "I'm about to ruin your day." I waved politely, hoping a smile would de-escalate the situation. Big mistake. Karen didn't wave back. Instead, she pulled out her phone faster than I could blink. A few seconds later, we heard the unmistakable click of her dialing 911. In our heads, we laughed nervously. Surely she wasn't serious. But she was. Deadly serious. Within minutes, we heard the distant wail of sirens. Our peaceful morning stroll had been upgraded to a full police investigation. Emma clutched the stroller, whispering, "Are we really in trouble for walking?" I wanted to reassure her, but honestly, I was just as shocked. When the officers arrived, Karen launched into a dramatic monologue, describing in excruciating detail how we were allegedly endangering pedestrians by using the sidewalk. She gestured wildly, pointing to a cracked patch of concrete, as if this minor imperfection justified summoning the authorities. The entire scene felt surreal, like we had stepped into a bizarre sitcom, where logic had taken a permanent vacation. The police officers were polite but clearly amused, taking notes while exchanging barely concealed glances with each other. I tried to explain calmly that we were simply enjoying a morning walk with our newborn, staying entirely on the sidewalk, following every reasonable rule a parent could follow. Karen, of course, ignored me completely, continuing her one-woman crusade against what she apparently saw as chaotic parenting. By this point, neighbors had begun to peek from behind their curtains, probably wondering why the cops were taking statements about a stroller. I couldn't help but feel embarrassed, frustrated, and honestly, a little bewildered. How could a routine family moment escalate to this level of absurdity? As the officers wrapped up and reassured us there was no real violation, Karen shot us a glare that could freeze fire. She stormed off, muttering under her breath, clearly plotting her next move. But little did she know, we weren't planning to retreat. This wasn't just about a sidewalk anymore. It was about standing up to ridiculous power trips. After the initial chaos, we thought the ordeal was over. We were wrong. Karen, apparently unsatisfied with just one dramatic 911 call, decided that her mission, to police every move in the neighborhood, was far from complete. That afternoon, as we tried to reclaim our sense of normalcy, she reappeared, this time lurking near the community park, her phone at the ready like a sniper aiming at innocent joy. We had barely taken a few steps into the park when she approached, smiling that cold, calculated smile that made it clear she believed she was the hero of some unspoken saga. Emma tried to ignore her, focusing on soothing our baby. But Karen wouldn't be dismissed. She leaned in, pointing toward the stroller, and said in a voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "You know, pushing that stroller here could be dangerous for other residents." Dangerous? Really? The sidewalk was wide, empty, and perfectly safe. But facts never seemed to matter to her. By this point, several neighbors had gathered, watching the interaction like it was a live theater performance. Some exchanged sympathetic looks, while others whispered incredulously about Karen's relentless obsession. I could feel a growing mix of anger and disbelief, but I kept my tone calm. Arguing with her directly only seemed to escalate the situation. Instead, I focused on reassuring Emma and keeping our baby calm, reminding myself that reacting aggressively would only give her more fuel. Karen's persistence reached a new level of absurdity when she insisted on taking photos of the stroller on the sidewalk. Yes, actual photos, as if documenting a crime scene would somehow validate her ongoing vendetta. I asked her politely to stop, explaining that we were fully within our rights to use the public sidewalk. But she brushed me off with a huff, muttering about rules and community safety, just when I thought things couldn't get any stranger. One of the officers who had responded earlier appeared. He had apparently been called again, this time by a concerned neighbor tired of Karen's obsessive behavior. The officer gave Karen a firm reminder there was no violation, and continued harassment could be considered harassment in the eyes of the law. Karen predictably scowled, muttering under her breath and storming off, clearly unbothered by the warning. Walking back home, Emma and I reflected on the absurdity of it all. A simple, innocent stroll had been transformed into an ordeal of epic proportions. fueled by one neighbor's obsession with enforcing rules that didn't exist. It was exhausting, humiliating, and yet strangely empowering. We realized that standing our ground was necessary, even in the face of someone who seemed determined to turn daily life into a battlefield. Little did we know, this was just the beginning. Karen had more tricks up her sleeve, and our next encounter would test our patience and resolve like never before. Just when we thought Karen's antics couldn't get any more absurd, she took things up a notch. A few days after the park incident, we noticed a flyer pinned to our community bulletin board. In bold, aggressive letters, it read, "Attention residents. Sidewalk safety alert, parents must supervise strollers." At first I thought it was a joke, maybe one of the kids in the neighborhood messing around. But then we realized it was Karen. She had gone full-on neighborhood crusader, spreading fear over something as ordinary as a morning walk. Emma and I exchanged incredulous looks. Our simple routine of pushing the stroller had turned into a public spectacle, with Karen acting like some sort of self-appointed neighborhood watchdog. But instead of letting it intimidate us, we decided it was time to fight back, not with aggression, but with strategy. We documented everything. Photos of the wide, empty sidewalks, timestamps of our walks, even a record of Karen's repeated harassment. It was like preparing a defense case. Except our only crime was existing as normal parents. The next morning, Karen reappeared, predictable, as ever, hovering near the sidewalk entrance to our street. But this time, we weren't alone. Several neighbors, tired of her constant interruptions and fear-mongering, stepped forward. One resident even jokingly held up a sign reading, "Relax, Karen, parents allowed." There was laughter, shared understanding, and suddenly, we weren't isolated. Karen's power relied on fear and secrecy, but now, it was crumbling in the face of community solidarity. As we walked past her, the atmosphere was tense. Karen glared, clearly frustrated that her usual intimidation tactics weren't working. I kept a calm demeanor, smiling politely at the group of neighbors surrounding us. Emma whispered, "It feels like a small victory." And it was. Finally. We weren't on our own. The officers who had responded to her previous calls had even begun to advise neighbors on how to handle these overreactions legally, emphasizing that bullying disguised as civic concern wouldn't be tolerated. Karen, sensing her influence slipping, tried one last dramatic gesture. She pointed at the stroller and called the police again. But this time, her call was met with a polite but firm explanation. There was no violation, and repeated nuisance calls could have consequences. It was a turning point. We realized that standing our ground, combined with community support, was the key to diffusing her over-the-top antics. Walking home, we felt a mix of relief and anticipation. The battle wasn't over, but we had learned something vital. When absurdity and obsession clash with logic and solidarity, the obsessed rarely win. And Karen? Well, she had no idea what was coming next. By now, Karen had clearly escalated from neighborhood enforcer to full-on menace. After multiple 911 calls, public flyers, and tense confrontations, it seemed like her obsession with policing our stroller walks had no end. But this time, we weren't just standing there quietly. Emma and I were prepared, armed not with anger, but with facts, community support, and a healthy dose of patience. That morning, as we pushed our baby down the familiar sidewalk, Karen appeared again, this time with a notebook, clearly ready to document another crime. She started her usual spiel about safety hazards and violations. But before she could finish, a neighbor stepped forward. One by one, others joined, sharing their own stories of harassment from Karen. The message was clear. She could no longer manipulate fear in isolation. The neighborhood was united, and her antics were losing power. Karen's face twisted in disbelief and frustration. She tried calling the police again, probably expecting a quick response like before. But the officers, already aware of her pattern of repeated nuisance calls, politely informed her that any future harassment could result in legal action. For the first time, she was on the defensive. The tables had turned. Emma and I continued our walk calmly, engaging with neighbors and exchanging smiles. The baby cooed in the stroller, completely unaware of the tension around her. It was almost surreal. What had started as a normal, peaceful stroll had escalated into a community-wide lesson about overreach, persistence, and standing up for yourself. Later that afternoon, Karen tried to rally a small group of like-minded residents. But the overwhelming response was clear. The neighborhood was tired of her constant interference. Many even shared that they had been quietly documenting her behavior for months. Suddenly, her power, built on intimidation and fear, was diminished. Instead of controlling the sidewalk, she found herself isolated, while our family's daily walks continued without issue. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, we realized that the story wasn't just about one overbearing neighbor. It was about resilience, community, and the importance of standing firm when faced with absurdity. What could have been a humiliating, stressful experience became an unexpected lesson in solidarity. We walked our baby on the same sidewalks, as we always had, but now with a newfound confidence, knowing that one person's obsession couldn't dictate the lives of an entire community. Karen didn't vanish entirely, but her attempts to intimidate us lost momentum. And honestly, that was enough. Because sometimes, standing your ground and pushing a stroller, of all things, is a victory in itself. The sidewalk was ours again, and our family could finally breathe. Did you enjoy this crazy HOA drama? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next story. Smash that like button to show your support, and drop a comment below. Have you ever faced a Karen like this in your neighborhood? I'd love to hear your stories.